Hello, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of Parenting Pickup. I'm Cara Johnson-Bader, your host. This month, we're highlighting some wonderful children's book authors here in Minnesota. In our studio today are Megan Maynor, Tracy Hyde, Lauren Gillman, and Camila Gadotti. Welcome, everyone. Would you mind introducing yourselves and the books you've written?
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Camila.
And we're the co-authors of the book Tolita, the Best Bad Dog. Our day jobs are working at different corporations, but we worked together to publish our first book last year, so we're new authors. Tolita, the Best Bad Dog is a story about a mischievous but lovable rescue dog named Tolita, her two moms, and human sister, Sophia. It's a story based on our life. The story teaches a lesson about acceptance and the commitment of owning a dog, so we hope it helps break the expectation that only good dogs deserve love.
Fantastic.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Megan Maynor. I'm a picture book author living here in the Twin Cities. And the book I brought to talk about today is called A House for Every Bird. It's written by me. It's illustrated by Kaylani Juanita and published by Knopf Books for young readers. And this story is about a girl who is an artist, and she is drawing some birds and drawing houses and matching them up. And then it turns out that the birds don't necessarily like where she has put all of them. So they kind of come to life and they have issues with her about their housing placements. And she is trying to get them to stay where she put them, and which all leads to her saying, why don't you just stay where I put you? What's so difficult about all this? And they say, it's not difficult, it's simple, just ask us. So this is a story about how we really only get to know each other by asking each other.
We're glad you're here. Tracy?
Hi, I'm Tracy Hyde. My book is Detective Murray, The Case of the Candy-Coated Books. Murray is a basset hound that considers himself a bit of a detective and finds a mystery around town, and it travels through a variety of locations around his local hometown, and he and his twin girls that are his owners have been able to solve the mystery and make the town proud of him.
That's fantastic. We're so fortunate to have all of you here today because we know for many families, children's books are really ubiquitous with home education. But I think that often they're taken for granted in the amount of kind of passion and creativity and hard work involved with the process of writing and creating visual art and kind of publishing and the promotion of the books. So we decided that it'd be wonderful to focus on your personal experiences, and maybe that would give families a newfound appreciation and interest in the art form. So I'll start with kind of what inspired you to write children's stories?
Yeah, I can take that one. I mean, so for Laura and I, we have a 4-year-old, Sophia, and obviously we read a lot to her, and we started realizing the impact that reading to your child, is, the conversations that it generates, the questions that, that they ask, and the lessons that you can teach. And as Lauren told you a little bit about Tolita, the Best Bad Dog, so it happens our Tolita has been rescued 4 times and returned 3 times. We are her 4th family, and we really wanted to teach Sophia and other kids that you don't do that to animals. Once you get them, they're your family. You take care of them. So we wanted to have an avenue to talk to Sophia about that, and we thought maybe it would be very important for us to share this with many other kids as well, because I think it's a topic of the moment, right? Everybody talks about rescues, and in addition to that, this is also a 2-mom book. The story is not about that at all, but we did want to have more representation in the children's book category of families that look like ours, right? Queer families, 2 moms in our case.
I got into this. I always enjoyed writing from the time I was a kid, and I was a 3rd grader, and we started doing some journal writing time in school. So I've always enjoyed writing, and I got into advertising as a copywriter first. So that was sort of my first avenue out of college, my first part of my career. But I always also enjoyed children's books, and I actually do have a friend from high school who can remember me saying in high school that was something I wanted to do, which is you got to hang on to these people because I forget, and then they can remind you that you actually did say that once. But so I've always been interested in writing children's books. And then as we were starting our family and our kids were young, I kind of came to that fork in the road that a lot of people face where you're, are you going to keep working full-time, part-time, at home? And so I was I was full-time, then I was part-time, then I was at home. And that kind of was when I decided to give this a little bit more of a serious effort. And I started taking some classes on writing picture books and then just doing it, writing stories and drafts till I had something that a publisher was interested in publishing.
For me, the pretend phase of life where you pretend to be a teacher was very prominent in my youth. In fact, we had copies of the teacher's manuals for a lot of the books that, that we could play with and things like that. So, and then I had a unique opportunity as an 8th grader to be the only student at my small Catholic grade school in my small town. And part of my educational day was to spend time with the kindergartners. And that really solidified my opportunity and desire to become a teacher. And so not many 8th graders can say they know what they're going to do for a career. So at that time I was like, well, wouldn't it be fun as a prominently early elementary education teacher to think, wow, it'd be fun to be able to write a book and read it to my future students. And so I kept that idea alive, even though I ended up teaching in middle school, which I still read out loud to the students all the time, and they loved that. But then I stopped teaching, unfortunately, and did keep the idea of still writing a book alive, and did so just a few years ago, and had the idea to use Murray, a dog that I actually knew in my youth as well, to be my subject of the book as well.
That's great. I love that each of you had a different kind of pathway and journey into writing, but they're all so personal and touching, and I think that's what makes your stories really special. So I'm interested in learning more about, like, how would you describe your writing and the creative process? And Tracy, do you mind if we start with you?
Sure. For me, I actually had been rolling around with the idea of writing it down for many, many months. And just one day, actually on a lunch break during my corporate job, pulled out a Word document and started typing. And then I kept it and printed it and reviewed it and had it proofread by myself a number of times. I eventually was an English teacher as well, so the writing process was pretty prominent in my life. And then eventually I just said to my husband, I said, well, I really want to get Murray published. And he just kept nudging me and saying, well, go for it, keep doing it. And I did, and found a unique publisher that was local to Minnesota, who helped me find my illustrator as well. And, about a year and a half later, the book was in print, and, the best day of my life was here. It was just awesome. So
It seems like you had a big support as well in your life, and you as well. People that kept saying, do it.
That really makes a difference, because it can be a long road and a little discouraging. So that's so helpful.
Yeah, because when you start researching it, you don't know where to start. There isn't a lot of direction out there for you. You reach out to an artist perhaps, or do a Google search for artists that draw children's books, and they're looking for thousands of dollars, immediately before they even put a pencil to paper. And you're like, whoa, do I even get to talk to you first, before you put a contract together or anything like that? So for my opportunity, it was, a bit more of just a casual conversation. Let's, build this together kind of concept. And my illustrator was fantastic. She herself is a young mom with dogs and things like that. So it's been fantastic to have, her name is Rhoda Lucy, to have Rhoda as part of the team. So.
That's great. That support is so critical. Megan, how about you?
So my creative process, I would say, is a little bit of a mix of playful chaos and precision. And so I think you kind of ultimately travel through all those areas when you're putting together a picture book manuscript. This will be a very short anecdote, but when you have children, you end up at all these different activities. And so when my son was in robotics, I was at the robotics meeting one day, and one of the other parents there is an engineer, and she was asking me, like, what do you do? And she's like, but really, how do you do it? Like, how do you do it? And so I was explaining, well, I write a draft, and then I'll kind of see what's working in there. Is there anything that's really, I feel like a little heat around that idea, or I really love this sentence or this character or something. I'll take that, leave the rest, start a new draft with that as the main thing, and kind of just do that over and over again. And she said, oh, so it's an iterative process. And I was like, yes. I was like, that's such an engineering way to look at it, and I had never thought of that, applying that word to it. But yes, it's 100% for me how I do it, an iterative process. So you just start with wherever, and that lowers the stress a little bit and the threshold of like, of it's a given that this is not going to be a finished product. So just messing around, playing around with ideas, characters, and then just doing that over and over again until it's time to share it with my writing critique group or my agent, and then I need to tighten it up. Because then, we know this book has to fit in 32 pages. It's going to be maybe 500 to 1,000 words. So now make it tight, and then share it and get feedback, and then go back to depending what that feedback is. Maybe it's just more tightening if you're very near the end of the process, but maybe it's a big change. So then kind of going back and being kind of loose and playful with it again. So I think if you're too tight, trying to make it precise, it can be hard to get to that really fun idea. And vice versa. At the end, at some point, you do really need to, in a picture book, you got to look at every line and every word. So kind of back and forth between those two modes.
Sure, that's great. Wonderful. And Camila and Lauren, I'm really curious about how the two of you do your writing. Do you do it together?
Sure.
Is it separate and you come together? I'm really fascinated to learn more about how your process works.
Yeah, so like Camila's...
I was going to say, I'm going to let you respond it because she is the writer of the team here, so go for it.
Yeah. So like Camila was saying, we had like a very specific idea already of what we wanted to write, that we had the idea of like what it would be rather than like, I just want to write a book. So I think that helped narrow down what we wanted to write. It's not something that, like we took some classes on kind of what to do, and we ended up going a hybrid publishing route. So we had some help, but it very much was driven as to how we wanted to do it. So I took on the kind of the writing part. I always enjoyed creative writing when I was growing up, but hadn't really done anything about that. So how I kind of looked at it was writing down, I resonate a little bit with what you said, Megan, of like, just kind of like writing it down and trying not to be too precise, but then going back in and being more precise and cutting things out. But what I found most helpful, that was something we learned, was to actually lay it out like a storybook, like a storyboard, knowing that it had to fit on those specific 32 pages, that it shouldn't be more than 1,000 words. And these were super helpful for me, being like kind of working in a slight box is kind of where my creativity can thrive. If it's too open-ended, for me, I found that not very liberating, if it was stifling, because I felt like there were too many routes I could take. So once I was able to put it into that like storyboard kind of sentence, then I could write things out. And then probably the hardest part actually was being vulnerable and showing it to Camila. And then you would actually look at it and give me some very honest feedback, which was great. So we kind of were able to go back and forth, and that was probably the most iterative side of it.
Yeah, it was interesting because the idea of writing a book, it kind of started perhaps more with me than with her. But again, she's the creative heart and soul of our relationship. I'm very much of a business person. Like I'll find how we're going to publish. We find, I'll create the contracts. So it was a partnership, but she was very much the writer of the story. And yes, it was interesting because I would provide feedback on her writing, and it's hard. We're also a couple, right? You have to separate that, and it was, it worked, but it can be difficult.
Yes, but we totally worked it out. And the nice thing is, like, I know you love me at the end of the day, so I could, even if it was hard feedback, and I would be able to take it. We're still together. Yes. So it was fun.
That is helpful.
Yes.
In that whole process. It's another example how there isn't like one way to write kind of your story. And so more of that makes me think about like, how do you tailor your writing for children? Because that's kind of a whole different element in writing for young children. So Megan, I'll let you kind of kick it off and tell us how you do that.
Sure. Well, there's so many things that I do love about picture books. And just starting with some of the basics, if we're thinking about how we're going to write the story for children, picture books are they usually say like maybe ages 3 to 7 or 4 to 8. We know kids a little bit younger and a little bit older read that, but they're meant for kids in that age group, read by adults. So as a writer, that's like you were talking about framework. I find that so helpful too, like any kind of parameters that just helps you be more creative. So writing picture books, you want the story to make sense to a child, but you have a lot of freedom with the language you use. A beginning reader doesn't have to solve this. So you can play around with lyrical language and rhythm and introduce new words that they can get in context and stuff like that. So that's one part of thinking about writing for children. But a little mantra that I come back to is like, what matters in the life of a child? And that was something like some early writing teachers said to me when I was learning to write picture books. And because we have to keep in mind who this story is for. And the great thing is, so many things matter in the life of a child, right? So many things fall under that umbrella, but it just helps you refocus. Am I telling this story in a way that will resonate with a child? So it could be about something really, really big, like someone moving away. It could be about what is still big in the life of a child, but might seem small to us, like my toy truck is stuck under the couch. You know what I mean? Like, it's all over the place. But just keeping that in mind, like who these stories are for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And Lauren, how about you?
Yeah, I think that we were especially like posed and ready for writing this book because of having a child who's like right in that age range, around 3. You know, when we started, she was probably around 3 years old. And so we've been reading to her forever. It's something that we always loved to do, and she always had a big interest in books. So it was really obvious to see what sparked with her and what kind of fell flat. But obviously we weren't writing it just for her. So kids all have different interests. So we actually went to a couple different local bookstores, and we would hear different readings as well to get an idea of like what things are making the kids laugh and what things are they may be losing interest on, and then where that married up with like what our actual style of writing would be. And so because our story was also, we wanted to kind of teach a lesson, but without kind of hitting anybody over the head with like, this is what you're supposed to get out of it, was a little bit of going back and forth on like, we have a lot of stories about Tolita, our rescue dog, that were like too traumatic to share, but were good learning lessons. So we had to figure out, what pieces of the truth are we going to keep in there? What things are we going to soften around the edges, and make it so that it's kind of this mixture of funny and teaching and lovable, and also that the thing that was going to be taught was actually a lesson that was learned by Sophia, by the child kind of telling the story, rather than by us, the adults, because that wasn't going to resonate. So telling the story from the child's point of view and adapting it in that way was really key. And I think that was the thing that we worked on the most to make sure that it would get through. And then once we actually started reading it to kids, we could see, oh, that was working. That was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. How about you, Tracy?
For me, I took an approach of, because Murray's a dog and he's using his sense of smell to solve the mystery, I really focused on how to best describe the sensory. He goes to the flower shop and they smell their favorite things. The mystery involves 4 clues, and then he follows those clues around, like they run into the postman who has peanut butter cookies in his pocket for all the dogs he meets, and things like that. And so I really tried to, when I was focusing and going through the editing process, of really making sure that I had descriptive words that would resonate with the listener as they were hearing the story, and that they could visualize the picture of what that person was actually smelling and things like that.
So you've all kind of found kind of artists who helped create visuals for you in your storytelling, and this is an audio podcast, so without any video. So how would you describe their work?
Rhoda took a fantastic approach with me and just kind of gave me some styles of characters to choose from as to what I visualized when I was seeing it in my own head, as I don't draw at all. Stick people, that's about it. So to see the characters from my own head kind of pulled out on the page was an amazing feature that she was able to do for me. But she gave me different styles, like when we were talking about the librarian. She drew, originally the librarian was an older character, and I said, no, I envisioned them, more middle-aged. So then we, brought it back and colored the hair differently and things like that. And do the twins have different styles of clothing, like one's a little bit more girly and one's a little bit more jeans and a t-shirt kind of type of design. So just that opportunity to pluck things out of each other's heads and just have the back and forth to make the visuals come to life. We also reference a variety of locations in my hometown that play a part in the book. So there's reference points to different locations. So it doesn't call it out specifically in the book, but it was fun to be able to just take a picture of a location in my town, and she could kind of illustrate it into the design and features like that. So, and then talking through the process in general of, well, do we want full color, full page images, or would you want little spot images on the page, and that how to drive the story forward with that as well. So, and then I let her have a little bit of a twist herself in there. There's a character called Superdog at the movies eventually, and she said, well, what should we design that dog to look like? And I said, design it like your dog at home, so that she has an actual piece in the book as well, not just my images of what I wanted Murray and the characters to be. So her dog makes an appearance too.
Oh, that's so nice. This is all just so much more involved than I actually imagined. Like, there's so much more in every step of it. How about for you, Megan? How did you go through that process?
Yeah, so my book is with a traditional publisher, so it works a little bit differently. So it's interesting, I think, like how all these same things have to be addressed, but they're done by different people. In a nutshell, that's the short version. So I, as a writer who am not also an illustrator myself, so I write the manuscript, and ideally, it is sold, it's acquired by a publisher, and I'm working with an editor. And once they acquire that manuscript, the editor will say to me, like, do you have any ideas about illustration, like style, or do you have a particular person in mind? And I'm welcome to give input and feedback. Usually at that point, my mind goes blank, like I've never seen a book before, and it takes me a while. But I have, for some of my books, I have suggested the person that we ultimately went with. In this case, my editor suggested Keilani Juanita, and I was over the moon because I think she's fantastic. And so, like, on the publishing side of it, the editor is also working with an art director, and part of their job is to keep up with illustrators to kind of be scouting talent and or like reaching out for specific projects and trying to, cultivate relationships with illustrators and just be able, to do that matchmaking. So once I've sold the manuscript, it's the publisher's choice. They can pick whoever they want, but they do want you to like your book. So I've always had a really good experience with that, where I've been included in that conversation. And like I said, I was just thrilled that they wanted to pitch this to Keilani and that she said yes. So then basically my manuscript goes to her, and that's all I do for a little while. And then I'll see maybe character sketches, and then maybe a little later down the line, like a sketch dummy, similar to maybe like writers might sometimes make our own dummies to help us figure out like if this fits in 32 pages. So I'll see sketches, a little bit down the line, but a lot of the like, what should this character look like, or some of that back and forth happens between the illustrator and the art director. So I'm kind of out here doing my own thing for a while, starting a new book, ideally. But then, it all obviously comes together at the end. And then I might request to even make more text edits once we see everything together. For instance, if something is in the picture now, maybe we don't need to say it in the text anymore. Or if she's illustrated something a slightly different way, maybe we need to make sure those things match, some fine-tuning. But in a nutshell, my job is primarily done on the front end, and then it goes to the illustrator. And the style for this book, I love Keilani Juanita's work, and everyone should look her up when you're not driving. But it's so playful and so detailed. Like, the details in this book are nuts because this girl is into birds, and so there's things in her fashion, like what she's wearing and in her room. And so it's what I love about that is that as you read picture books over and over again, I feel like there are so many details. There's new things to discover each time. And then because of the nature of this story, she really created like 3 different illustration styles within this book too, because we have the artist's room, like her bedroom, which is where we start. And then we have what her drawings look like, so she also did the style of like a child's drawing. And then the character goes into the drawings, and that is sort of like a third realm. So they're, a little bit different in each place. So, she's a genius, we can just say. But it's really lovely, and it's just full of it's just fantastic. And she brought so much to it that I wouldn't have even imagined. So I think this is, ideally a picture book. The art and the text together. It's bigger than the sum of its parts. So I just am so happy with how it turned out.
Absolutely. So Laura and I, we started the entire process of writing the book by taking a hybrid publishing course. And in that course, they gave us recommendation of several websites you can go to look for artists, freelance artists that do book illustrations. And when we went to that website, she and I, we talk about, okay, what are we looking for, right? And for us, it's our family, right? The characters of the book, it's our dog, it's Mama Camila, it's Mama Lauren, it's our daughter Sophia. So we wanted to, and being Tolita, one of the key characters in the story is we really wanted someone that could draw an animal in a way that it can show emotions very clearly via that drawing. And it's difficult because you can show emotions on a human face, right? With an animal, it's very, very different cue. So we wanted an artist that had experience on that. And then we didn't want like ultra realistic, drawings of our family, but we wanted to have some similarities as well, right? So kind of we used that. We browsed through probably hundreds of artists until we picked our. Her name is Marcela, and she happens to be Brazilian. Coincidence, which I'm Brazilian as well, right? It wasn't something that we actually learned later on. And we feel like she did a great job. Lots of details as well, which was important to us to keep children entertained for many reads and not just one.
That's great. Well, I'm going to go back to both of you again to ask you what suggestions or tips and resources for creatives who may want to start writing or illustrating for children's book. What tips do you recommend?
Yes, that's a good question, and I would say that first off, understand what it takes, because as you said it yourself, Cara, it's very involved.
Absolutely.
First you got to write a story, and the story has to fit certain parameters. It needs to be edited probably multiple times, right? Then you got to look for a illustrator. There's got to be a contract with the illustrator. Who owns that illustrations, right? And you got to design the book. So you got to have a book designer. So you got to budget, understand the process, budget the process. And I would say that the ultimate advice that I have is go through it step by step. When you look at the process as a whole, is daunting, and if you look at it, you probably think, oh, no way, I'm not doing it, right? But it's like you eat an elephant, one bite at a time, right? And just stick to it and do it. It was, once we were done with it, now we look back, we were very happy we did it.
Yeah.
But when we were in the middle of it, it was like, why did we start this? And then we had this conversation. No, like let's do it, right? We planned this. Let's stick to it. So,
yeah, stick to a timeline.
Yes,
Stick to it.
And hold yourself accountable and other people accountable. And we have part of our class. When we were doing the hybrid publishing class, we had interactions with a lot of people that were going through the same process. And a lot of the authors struggled with holding other people accountable and having difficult conversations, right? And I'm a business person. For me, it was no problem.
Right. That's your wheelhouse and your world.
So they were like, well, my illustrator is late, but it's like, no. Here's what you need to do.
See, and I would go the opposite. My relationship with Rhoda was much more fluid. We're both working parents. She's got a young child at home, and we said, yeah, let's shoot for this time frame. But when other things came up, she moved, she had other commitments. She's one of those pumpkin carving experts that's at the Minnesota Zoo. If anybody's been out to those, you've seen some of Rhoda's work, so that's fantastic. A little plug for her there. We were very fluid about it. We had a contract, yes, but it was not a hard and fast, super strong deadline. We were both very fluid with it. So that was a relief off of my shoulders, to not have to be like, well, she's late again. No, we were both fluid about the whole thing. So
That's great.
yeah.
Made it a little easier.
Yeah, I did.
I would say in the order that I do it to submit to a traditional publisher, all the deadlines are my own, which is a real blessing and curse, right? So I have to be tough on myself. But I guess thinking about folks who might be listening, if they would like to write picture books, I think there's a couple little bits that I can share, like this little chestnut that's been passed around for years, but I think is useful, is read 100 books like the one you want to write. And if you're a parent, you're probably immersed in picture books if you're a parent of that kids in that age range. And if you're interested in getting published, I would focus that reading on books that came out in the last 5 years, because it takes for a book to go, if things are going smoothly, from beginning to end, about 2 years. And, styles change. If we look at like picture books from when we grew up, like they are longer, and like the illustration style is different. So,
and some of the stories are questionable.
some of the stories are questionable. It's true.
That is true.
It's true. That's true. That makes me think of several stories we could talk about later. But
Exactly.
So if that's your goal, read 100 books, focus them on more recent titles, because they're already like 7 years old by the time you see them. And I can share a couple organizations that are really helpful. One is SCBWI, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which is a great sort of place to start with learning the industry. They have memberships. They're a national organization, and they also have regional chapters. So there might be people near you that you can meet up with. If you live in the Twin Cities, the Loft Literary Center is a great place. They do online classes too. And there's another organization called We Need Diverse Books, which is fantastic to check out. And they also have, some mentorships and other programs that are really cool. And then beyond that, I would say if you're interested, if you feel called to do this and try it, you get better at writing by writing. So just start messing around. And have fun. Hopefully you're interested in it because it sounds exciting, and you want to get in there and play around. So just have a good time.
How many books have you wrote, Megan?
I have 7 that are published.
Okay, very
And
nice.
heaps in a drawer.
For myself, getting into the creativity is just, if it calls to you, go for it, like the idea of spreading the creativity out there.
Well, I have to say, I'm in awe of everyone in this room and the process and the amount of time and effort you've dedicated to creating your books. I'm just absolutely in awe, and I'm sure all of the listeners are as well. This is kind of the point in the podcast where we take a break to hear a word from our sponsor. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back and dive more into learning about each of our authors and the amazing work that you do.
What did you do at New Horizon Academy today, Miles?
Mom, the letter of the week is S. We added the word sun to our word wall. We read a book about the weather, built a solar oven on the playground. We practiced star breathing, and then I learned how to make an S in sign language. It was so fun!
Sounds like you had a great day.
New Horizon Academy offers premium early childhood development for all families. We serve best-in-class social-emotional education for kiddos from infancy to school age. Check us out at newhorizonacademy.net.
Well, welcome back. Next, I'm excited to chat about with our authors about kind of what are some things you've noticed you like or seen each other's work, because you've had an opportunity to look at one another's work. So let me know what you think.
I can start. I was just looking at Tolita and commenting on this, how the color palette's so lovely and warm. And I can see you mentioned that you were looking for an illustrator who could really do dog expressions, and I can really see that coming through. It's so great. Have you guys had a chance to read it in front of lots of kids, and how has that gone?
Yes, that's a great question. So usually when you have a story to tell, you don't write books because you make money. You have a story that you really care about and you want to share with the world. Right. So yes, a lot of what we are doing is reading to schools. So we have had we have a readathon actually in a public school coming. I believe it's next week that we're doing. We have done many others, including I think maybe 5 at New Horizon schools throughout the Twin Cities, and it's always great to see the kids laugh when it comes to like the parts that we thought were meant to be funny, that we thought were funny, and it's really rewarding. So we're telling the story. We're trying to teach compassion for animals, right? And it's great.
Yeah, we wanted to have, because she's a mischievous dog, have some little things that like there's place where she's like eating a snail, or like there's a little ghost that scares her, like these little things that would connect and be like just a little silly for kids. Yeah, and I was like, and for us too.
Yeah.
But it was really cute to see like the kids picking that up, and then when you're reading in front of a class, right, it's a little bit further away, so they don't quite take it in as much. But then having like talking to other friends or people that have had their kids read it, and then what they kind of zone in on is very cute too. I was curious about your book too. Megan, with all the different details too, if you saw how that comes through.
Yeah, I have. When I've had a chance to read it to like a classroom of kids, say, with this book in particular, I do a little bit of like pre-reading talk because there's like a couple things you have to catch at the beginning of the book. So sometimes I do like, we might, a story might start before the words, and we can see here she's at the desk, and now we're looking at the top of the desk. And then when the birds start moving around, like, see how this shape, it looks like it used to be over here, and stuff like that to kind of hopefully help kids follow along. If you're reading to a child on your lap, you can do that as you're reading. But yeah, for this book in particular, there's like a couple leaps that if I'm reading to a group, I try to make sure they're catching. But I appreciate the reading out loud and getting feedback too from live audiences of kids, because if they laugh at the stuff that you thought was funny, nothing more rewarding. Sometimes it's surprising and they laugh at something you didn't know was going to be a laugh line, which is great. So it's been really fantastic.
Yeah.
How's it gone for you, Tracy?
Yeah, getting to read in front of the kids. I've been able to read in my hometown a couple of times, which is Waconia, where the book is set, and the kids in particular were like, I recognize that place. They're like, that's the post office, or that's the movie theater. I've been there. And then they, of course, talking about the movies that they've seen at the theater, but, that they all really enjoyed the opportunity to kind of connect with that piece. And it's not meant to be about Waconia in particular, but that, any town has a post office and a library and a movie theater and things like that, that it could be, anybody's reference point in a town nearby. So.
Yeah. One thing that has been very interesting to us, and hasn't happened a lot of times, but when it did, it was fantastic. In our neighborhood, we did lots of readings there, and there's a lot of parents that knows and kids. And we have, we were walking Tolita, and so like, is that Tolita from the book? And that is really cool. It's like, yes, you can come say hi. So Tolita is becoming a mini star. So and that is really cool, yes. She doesn't even know it.
Right, she deserves it. She deserves to be the hometown celebrity.
Yeah. Yes.
Do people recognize the fact that it's Sophia as well?
Not usually, but because Tolita's, she's a very different dog. The markings that she has, and she's kind of scruffy, not every dog looks like that. So I think she's more recognizable.
Yes.
Cute.
Yeah.
That's cute.
I liked in Megan's book as well. I happened to get to the last few pages. There was the illustration of the full-out detailed page of them at a dinner party, it seemed. Yeah. And then the back cover image is the little girl's impression of how she drew the dinner party of the same birds. And I actually did a flip back and forth to kind of do some comparisons and see how the illustrator portrayed both of those images. And that was really neat.
That see, genius.
How she walked through the brain work of all of that.
Fun?
And
I think it's fun for kids to be able to do that. And at the end, they're all having a meal together. Yeah. And so the birds from earlier in the book, you can find, it's one of those spreads where I think you can take a minute and enjoy the pictures, because you can, yes, exactly, you can see, here's small bird and large bird, and here's the duck, and here's the parakeet, and a bunch of other birds we haven't seen before either. And as I mentioned before, like the level of detail that she put on these birds is fantastic. So they're wearing fancy outfits, and they're, one of them, the parakeet has like a little baby Bjorn that has an egg in it. And like, it's just, you could spend a lot of time just discovering fun new things in there.
That's great. I'd love to know what everyone's future plans are in the world of writing. What are your next steps?
Book 2 of Murray is headed to the illustrator here soon. Murray's going to go to the county fair, which I think many people can also relate to. And again, he's going to use his sense of smell to figure out a mystery. There might be some character flow from the current book. I'm not going to give away anything too far, but think of all the things that you can smell at a fair. My husband and I have already decided that there has to be a caramel apple on the ground somewhere from a time in my life where we got rained out of going to like the demo derby, and my daughter and I had just been to the caramel apple stand, and she was about 5 at the time, and we got poured on. And so of course we had to pitch the caramel apple because it wasn't going to be worthwhile by the time we got to the car. So we said, since it was at the fairgrounds, we have to have that caramel apple on the ground, that it missed the garbage can. So not that we wanted to litter, but that we missed the garbage can because of the rain. So, little fun things like that. And then my husband and I are also sheriff's reserves for the county. So the book will hopefully include the likeness of one of the county deputies as well as one of the canine deputy dogs in the book as well as part of the case solving part of things. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that you can put little details in that that are special to you. I love
For
that.
sure.
I love
Yeah.
that. Make it very
Real
personal.
life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I have a book coming out next year called It's Taco Night.
Oh, fun.
KNIGHT. And it's about a land of dinner nights. The dinner nights bring the evening meal to the villagers every evening. And Taco Night arrives on the scene, thinks he's the best, shoves all the other nights out of the way. Pizza night, soup night, sandwich night, they all get upset. Taco Night has to learn to appreciate variety. So that's coming out next year. It's illustrated by Estrella Lorenzo. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I hope it will be fun. And she also illustrated Counting to Bananas, if you've seen it, which made me totally want her for this book because the banana main character is just over the top expressions and emotions, which also fits this Taco Night character. He goes through a lot of highs and lows. So she knocked it out of the park, and I'm excited to share that next summer sometime.
That's great.
That sounds so funny.
Great. For us, we want to get our book further, right? So the story is very important for us. We do not have a sequel yet in our plan, although there are many Tolita stories we could tell.
Yes.
But first, we want to make sure that this goes wide and far. Mm-hmm. And then if that happens, when that happens, then we'll think about the sequel. Mm-hmm. Would that be accurate from your standpoint? I mean,
Yes.
I guess we are a duo, right? So
Yes, I think so. It was such an experience going through a full year of writing and figuring out how we were gonna publish this book, and just figuring out the whole process while it was just a very busy year for us personally and professionally too. So we felt like we bit off a lot. We could chew all of it because we got through it, but it was a very busy year. So I think we're really dedicated to seeing how far we can bring this book and learning more and connecting with other authors and just learning more about what we could do in the future too, and what we would change. And that actually brings me to a question I have for all of you as well. Now that you've gone through, Megan, you've published quite a few books, and Tracy, you're working on your second one. What are things that you've learned that you would change, or you have changed through doing the process, that have made it better for you, or things that you've learned?
Gosh, I've been doing this for a long time. So recently, one of the things I learned or was reminded of was just the value of taking an idea and truly trying to be playful with it and looking at it from all different sides. So I have a story that's on submission right now about sledding. So there's so many different ways we could tell this, and I played around with it for a long time. It's maybe not your most efficient use time-wise, but then again, you don't know because you'll never get to that other idea unless you play around for a while. But so I tried it, from different characters' points of view. Maybe the first one was something about more of an instruction book, how to go sledding. What do you need? And then I tried it from point of view of an owl in the tree watching this chaos unfold, because the idea is all the people who come together on a hill on a snow day. And so I think that is kind of a recent lesson I was, just, I don't know, kind of landing for me was the value of that, of just really taking I don't know if it's a big swing in that story per se, but being bold in ways to try to tell it, because that's, for me, that's fun, first of all. And we ought to be having a little fun while we're doing all this.
Sure.
And more likely for me to get to something that maybe isn't already out there, hasn't already been told. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sledding's not a new idea, but maybe this will be told in a way that hasn't been told before. So that's a more recent one that I've been kind of sitting with.
Yeah. For me, it's just the concept of taking creativity to the next level in my own head and bringing it to the page. I was with writing the second book, it's okay, well, what smells at the fair do I want to bring forward? And I know where I want them to land. So it's but how do I get that? And will a kid understand, a smell that I commonly smell? For example, they may end up at the tractors in the midway at the fair. How does this tractor smell? To a child, I'm going to smell dirt. I could smell, to an adult, you may smell the dirt or the oil of the engine. What is a kid going to smell? So I actually was talking to a friend last night, and I said, you have young kids, what would they smell if they were smelling a tractor? And she didn't think that oil would be something that a kid would recognize the smell of in their head, but gasoline maybe, because they might be purview to mom and dad filling up the gasoline in the truck or in your vehicle. And so that would be a more common smell, if we're going that route. So, just kind of knowing where I want the story to go, but how to get it there and, still use that creative sensory concept for me. So, yeah, other than that, I would say the process, I would do it over and over again with the people I've been able to have the opportunity to work with. So how about for you guys? What have you learned over the way?
That we do not know if we will do it again.
It's so good. Why would you take the opportunity to stop?
It was interesting because, not talking a little bit about the book for a second here, but perhaps about our life, right? So we both have corporate jobs, and my job takes me away from home a lot. And when we kind of got around the idea of let's write a book, I had a job that it was very comfortable, was very successful at it, and we started the process, and then my company promoted me into a brand new job that made me travel about 80% of the time, and it was complete chaos. And when we start something, we finish, right? We're very serious about it. It's like we are going to go through this, as I mentioned at the advice. Go through it no matter how hard. We went through it, but it was difficult. Personally for us, when we think about that year, I was barely home, and then when I was home, we got to work on the book, right? And we have a child too, so it was in a way traumatic.
I shouldn't laugh.
That's true.
No, it's good to laugh at it now.
We are very happy we've done it. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But are we ready for a second book? No, because we need to digest that process that was so difficult for our family and really enjoy the product of that very difficult year. And like I said, take it wide and far. I think that was something that, as you mentioned, we should have fun while doing it. And for us at one point there, it just became not fun. Yeah. Even though it is a fun process. We know it is, because when we started, we were having a blast. We learned so many new things. I mean, we never thought that we would learn how to write a book and the process of it and the language, the jargon, and the different people we've met. But it was, in a way, personally painful because of the time of our life it was.
And I think it's also so interesting because reading so many picture books, right? Like I mentioned, we have having a really young child, you're just used to reading them. Like going to the library, I don't know how, I must have read hundreds, if not 1,000 picture books by now. And so I wonder if, like, now that we've read even more of them, if we would change also some of the approach on what we would do. And I'm like wondering, I think when I was going through it, I was like, ooh, would I do rhyming? Oh, would I do this? So, like, would I do it some other way? And I think we were a little bit rushed through the process that I wish I could marinate on it a little bit more. Yeah. I've had like a few things, like little things that get stuck in my head of like, oh, this is kind of a cool rhyme pattern. Then I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like I have a busy job, and I have a 4-year-old who's very demanding and a dog with separation anxiety, as we explain in the book. So I'm like, I don't have time for this. I'll put this away for another time. But I think it'll come out again. I wonder if when we're a little bit less busy, it'll come out again. And it was so fun to do as a project together as well. Like Camila mentioned, you have more of the business side of the brain, but some of the creativity, but we also have these ideas that we were really good at working out together. So we found a really good rhythm to work together on a project, and it was cool to have something that was just like our own little thing that became like our own hobby, but it was a very productive hobby as well. So I think we'll come back to it again, but just maybe not very soon.
Well, I am so honored to have all of you on the podcast. I have to say that I've always been a lover of children's books, but I think I have a deeper appreciation for the entire process and the joys and the pain and just the sheer amount of time and effort and how there's no two pathways the same to create the book or come up with the idea, and it's just incredibly impressive. So I'm just so excited that you were all here. So thank you so much for being here, kind of as our special guest. And I think before you leave us, I'd really like for you to be able to let us know where we can find your book. I would love for our listeners to be able to hear that.
I'll start. Sure, thanks. So Detective Murray and the Case of the Candy-Coated Books is available on Barnes & Noble, both in print and on the digital format, as well as Amazon on both print and digital format. And then we have a digital publishing house called Draft 2 Digital that is international and has all sorts of downloading capabilities. It's even in the Apple Audio or in the Apple Books, so as well through that publisher as well.
A House for Every Bird you can find at local independent bookstores. If you're in the Twin Cities, it's often on the shelf at Red Balloon or Wild Rumpus, or wherever you are. You can go to your bookstore and request it. If you like to order books online, you can get it at Amazon. I'll also let people know there's a place called bookshop.org where you can order books online, and all the proceeds benefit local independent bookstores. So if you're an online book orderer, that's just another option.
Very nice. Very nice. You can find Tolita, the Best Bad Dog, online at our website, which is www.tolitasworld.com, or also Amazon, right? It is available on softcover, hardcover, and also for downloads on iPad and Kindle, etc. So we think you're going to love it. I think, like we said before, and probably true for the both of you, as you, Megan and Tracy, you usually don't put out a children's book because you're going to become a millionaire by doing so. You do it because there's a story you want to tell and something you want to teach. So look up our books, right? Our true books, and hopefully you and your child will have some fun reading it.
I agree. I know I can tell the story behind the story, which is really just incredibly impressive. So again, thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like more information on this episode or need access to other resources mentioned, head to our website at newhorizonacademy.net. And if you have questions, please email us at parentingpickup@nhacademy.net. Thanks and have a great day.